Now the other part I didn't show you is when I added on these segments to the wings, I actually had my client stand up in a relaxed but straight position. So all the artwork and the wings and everything is, completely straight and perfect when they're at rest and standing normal. You don't want to necessarily draw this or anything at all in general, actually. If you're freehanding something on the skin, you definitely want the client standing upright in a normal position. You never want to draw when they're sitting, laying down, or in any kind of awkward position, because it's going to distort when they actually stand up. You don't really realize that even if it looks like they're straight, even right here, for example, it's a relatively straight position and it seems like it would work because it's a symmetrical piece. When you stand up, your body's still going to shift regardless of who it is or what the drawing is. So you always want to have the client, again, standing up in a normal, relaxed position when you're drawing, adding on, or anything like that. Putting the stencil on, any time up to the actual tattooing part, you want them standing. Now also what you see too, when I'm actually stretching this, and depends on what angle you're working from, it'll actually distort it in different spots. Even though the skin is nice and taut and it's workable and you can tattoo like that, sometimes your lines don't look straight. But as long as you're actually following the stencil, even if you're doing it and the line's twisted and you follow it, and when you let go, it should snap right back to normal and be correct. So, that's very important. It's a key part to get your stencil and your lines on there nice and straight. And, have faith and trust in your line work, and then just follow that and you should be just fine. But again, this is also why I'm kind of lightly just going at it and building it up a little bit, just to, ensure that it's following a nice, smooth, even path. Now, as you can see, being this is a cover-up, the majority of the tattoo is on nice, crisp, clean, open skin with no pre-existing marks on it. And the top, third of the piece is where the actual cover-up is going to be taking place. And again, initially, I just wanted the basic perimeter of everything, laid out on here. And I'm worrying about the inside detail part later. And basically, what you want to keep in mind, though, focus on is you want it to have a relatively high amount of line work without being clustered up. So where, you have nothing real specific, you don't want to use something that, like a portrait, for example, or anything that's, got a real exact specific, image or amount of detail or anything particular you're trying to relay, which is like this, for example. It's going to have like a lot of different, veins and lines crisscrossing through it. And those shapes you can kind of play with, and they don't necessarily have to be anything specific. It's just the design, more or less, which will work great for this. And then the background, any spots that are actually showing through a negative skin, you can just utilize a little bit of black ink, with the mag, and then just kind of fill it in, and then wash it out, and it'll kind of just blend it into the background, and it'll give you a nice contrast too. But that's why I'm using, the wings in particular for the majority of the cover up on this. But something like a flower works well too in that instance, because you can kind of play with the leaves and the petals and build it up and fold them in on each other. But again, that's just a couple different types of artwork you can use for cover-ups. But again, it doesn't really necessarily have to be anything in particular. You're not really limited. And again, cover-ups are kind of tricky because you're not really guaranteed any particular piece is going to come out good or bad. Some things that you might necessarily not think are going to work at all sometimes work great, and vice versa. The good thing though about this tattoo is that, as you can see, the pre-existing piece I'm trying to cover up actually had a couple treatments of laser removal on it, and it lightened it up enough to where it's not actually solid black. As you can see next to my line work, it's nice and crisp and clean, and this is kind of, it looks like a washed out sort of gray. So again, that's very good. I'm not dealing with a very stark black tattoo. And that lightness to it is going to work really well once I start doing my shading, where it's nice and solid black, and I fade it out into the gray and then into the negative skin. Theoretically, you shouldn't be able to see this at all. It'll look like it never was even on the skin to begin with. And ideally, that's exactly what you're going for in a cover-up. But again, there are sometimes, given the space you're working with, the size of the tattoo, location, the design you're working with, what your client wants, etc. There are times, incidences where certain parts of the tattoo are going to fall in areas that become very, very, very tricky. Next to impossible to get it completely gone, and you might have, little bits of something sticking out in a little random spot. And again, there's it is artwork, so you can kind of be creative in that aspect. And like I said, with what I'm doing here, because that kind of falls in empty skin where there's no design going on there, that's just blank skin. Like I said, I'm just going to utilize just straight black and just wash the background out a little bit on that one. Kind of give like a dark, kind of smoky background vibe to it. But anyway, what I'm going to go ahead and do now is, as you can see, I'm just working my way around the perimeter of this and then back into it. I'm going to go ahead and do that and finish up the line work, and then my next step is going to be drawing in little bits of detail here and there on the inside of this, the perimeter that I've drawn here, and then we'll keep working our way in from there.